this is where the United States is there. We've run into resource limitations. That we've pretended that we've got unlimited resources, that we don't have to worry about getting new Tomahawks because we've got plenty, man. It's all coming through the pipeline. That's not the case. The Chinese are sitting on 18 rare earth minerals, processed rare earth minerals. This is the other thing that people get wrong, because they say, well, we've got plenty of rare earth minerals here in the United States, which is true. Just 25, 30 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, I can take you to a mine called Mosaic. They got big piles of material that have been dug out of the ground, discarded, called mining tailings. And in those, there are these rare earth minerals, but they have to be processed. And the processing is expensive and it's dirty. And guess what? About the only country in the world that does the processing is China. That's why they have almost monopoly control over these. So here's the United States. We want to build new Tomahawk missiles, but we need these 18 rare earth minerals, including gallium, and we can't get it. So no matter if we got all the metal and stuff to put them together, we don't have the other essential items, which means we're not producing any Tomahawks. Same for JASSMs. And then we just learned 2 weeks ago, Secretary of the Air Force said, yeah, the last 6 F-35s that were delivered to the U.S. Air Force, and understand each one of those costs $100 million, okay? Each one that was delivered didn't have the radar and the nose cone. Why? Well, because rare earth minerals and magnets out of China, they don't have them. So instead, for that plane to fly properly, it's got to have a certain weight in the nose cone. So they went out and bought some, weights, like you go to the gym, you put those plates on a barbell and lift it. That's what they put in the nose cone of this plane. But then the Secretary of the Air Force says, no, by the way, in terms of combat readiness, ready to go up and fly and fight, we've only, the F-35, only 30%, is 25 to 30% readiness. So the United States keeps talking like we're Trump keeps insisting we're the mightiest, the military, the best, and we're not. It is a lie. It's an abject lie of self-deceit on our part.
Israel wants to be independent of the United States. They don't want to be that much, receiving basically what Benjamin Netanyahu said in his recent, you saw it was in Hebrew, but there's some sort of clips out of that interview that he's done, part of his campaign to make some sort of propaganda for his position in Israel. But basically what he says is, we're going to be independent. We don't want to be totally dependent on the United States in terms of the armed missiles, interceptors, all of this and that. Then he says, not only Benjamin Netanyahu, but the opposition, they basically are afraid of Turkey together with Iran. And let's assume, Larry, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, Israel decides to go on a preemptive attack, because always is a preemptive attack. It's not, the other countries attacking Israel and Israel responding. They always attack other countries, and they argue that it's a preemptive attack. They were about to attack us. That's why we're attacking them. What is the sentiment in the United States as an outcome of this war against Iran? How long are they going to continue to fight or to back Israel? Because there is some sort of limitations to what the United States can do in the region.
Yeah, it is. It's not a perfect bifurcation. What I mean by that, it's not choosing Israel or choosing Iran. On the one hand, you overall have a very negative, the American people, very negative view of Iran. Iran is viewed as this, terrorist state, that it is a fanatical Islamic state, jihadist. They want to, quote, impose Sharia law, that kind of thing. So, but at the same time, the attitude of the popular public opinion about Israel is going negative as well. So you've got less and less support. The reflexive support that was present, say, 10 years ago with respect to Israel, that's gone now. So they're moving in the opposite direction, where less support, less interest, less willingness to support Israel.
Yeah. Turkey, the foreign minister of Turkey was asked, how do you feel about Israel and the way Israel is pictured in Turkey as the main enemy in the West Asia? He said that our concern is not Israel, because we know that they're not going to be able to fight us. And Larry, when it comes to Israel, it seems to me that the leaders of Israel are so much delusional, the way that they see themselves militarily.
Yeah, yeah.
All of that. Because you have to, when you are a strong military, you have to consider your population, the size of your country, and how capable you are to go underground, not hitting some targets from the air.
Yeah. No, they've always that's been the hallmark of Israel. It's arrogance, that combination of arrogance and hubris. Always thinking they're better than they are. Objectively, you step back and say, okay, Israel. There's a lot of. I'm amused by how many Western analysts criticize Russia for the quote slowness of its offensive against Ukraine, and yet when you look at the vast territory that Russia has been covering, and the number of units engaged, etc., and then you come and look at Israel, who all they had was an area 5 miles wide, 25 miles long, which was, and they literally controlled all access points in and out of that territory. And yet, after almost it's approaching 3 years, they've been unable to defeat Hamas. They've killed a lot of civilians, and it's shocking that the Palestinians are able to survive as they have. But again, it's just a reminder that Israel's military is pretty weak, actually. They've got a robust air force, and they can bomb the shit out of civilians, and they're really good at killing civilians. That's what they demonstrated. Other than that, they've proved to be very ineffective.
And here is what the foreign minister of Turkey said, that the Israeli regime is more than just a problem for Turkey or Erdogan. It's a crisis for all humanity. This regime has become a burden on humanity that no political, economic, or human conscience can bear any longer. And this is the sentiment. That's why I think in Israel they're feeling that Turkey is the main enemy right now.
Well, again, and think this, this is what is so maddening about the Israelis. So now they're painting Turkey as their main enemy, the one that they have to militarily defeat after they get done with Iran. And which country is providing them oil? Who's their major supplier of oil? Turkey or Turkey. And so you want to pick a fight. It's like, if my let's say all of my salary, all the money that I get was coming, or most of the money that I get is coming from you, and then I'm going to show up on your show every day and call you a motherfucker and say and insult you and threaten you. I don't think I'd be invited back onto your show. It's like, ban him, get rid of him. So, I mean, that's why I say it's the lack of logic in what Israel does is it's stunning. And again, it comes from the arrogance factor. They're so, well, we're so we know best. We got the best counterterrorism. We got the best this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah. Jerusalem Post reported, Larry, that there was a major plan to topple the Iranian so-called regime using the Kurdish forces backed by Israeli Air Force. And it was sabotaged because J.D. Vance somehow leaked the plan to Erdogan. Then Erdogan entered in contact with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump decided not to do that. Is that something? What is your understanding of this story? And do you see any sort of logic behind it?
No, that's what any lesson that we should have learned by now is when you're dealing with situations and personalities and nations in the Levant, West Asia, Middle East, however you want to call this area. Don't logic and sanity are not at the top of the list in terms of relevant and analytical skills. They're going to arm the Kurds. Okay, they armed the Kurds. How many Kurds are there? Are there like 2 million, 3 million under arms? No. Okay, and they're going to do what in Iran? That if they're going to overthrow the government of Iran, that means they're going to have to come into and take control of Tehran. How many soldiers are required to do that? The Kurds don't have that many soldiers. They're not that big. So, and even if they got, quote, air support from the United States, or any aircraft flying over Iran at that point likely be shot down. So, yeah, this is, I don't know. I think that the story is being put out, if nothing else, just I try to damage J.D. Vance because Israel is really, I think, very angry with Vance because he is moving forward with these negotiations with Iran. And as long as those negotiations are underway, there's always a chance they're going to make a deal.
Yeah. Basically, the Zionists on X, they're attacking him right and left.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a theater, in my opinion. That's really, they're Israelis in Israel, they're attacking him. Mm-hmm. And because he just behind the scene is somehow behaving or, countering or going against Donald Trump and what Donald Trump wants for Israel, and he tries to convince Donald Trump. I don't see any of that. I don't see Donald Trump in that much.
Yeah. No, this is Trump does not have control over what's going to happen with respect to Iran and the region. Now, I know the Pakistanis have been pretty insistent that they've got control of this, but they don't, and I guess the variables are what are the Saudis going to do? They've proven they're not necessarily trustworthy. Or let me put it this way: if the Pakistanis succeed in creating this, I'll call it pan-Islamic security force that brings Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, along with Pakistan together in a military alliance, then yeah, that's going to be a game changer. But I don't think we're there yet. That's where it's supposed to go, and if that happens, then yeah, the Israelis are in real trouble.
Bloomberg reported European nations have made peace with the fact that Iran will impose fees in the Strait of Hormuz, viewing it as inevitable and urging Iran, do you think, Larry, let's assume they're going to accept that and they're going to receive more oil from the Strait of Hormuz and from the Gulf countries together with Iran. Does that mean that they want to continue the war in Ukraine?
Oh
Because
yeah. Why would you think they wouldn't?
how long do they want to continue the war? That's a big question for me. I don't know why is that so difficult to understand for Europeans to, this path of fighting Russia in Ukraine. This is not going to work for them. What was the benefit for Europe so far? For 4 years, we are
Oh,
approaching 5 years of war in Ukraine.
yeah. There you go, thinking logically again. So, look, um, the we're at a point in this war that the Ukraine's losses are accelerating. The the missile drone strike that Russia unleashed on Kiev on Wednesday. So here we are Friday. So on Wednesday was devastating. Uh, they took out some critical defense industries. You can make the case, why didn't they do this before? Don't know, but you can't go looking they say looking up a dead horse's ass. That doesn't get you anywhere. We look at where we are now. At the same time, they are Russia is taking out all the gas stations east of the Dnieper River. I mean, literally, nobody's going to be able to fill up a car with gas. So you're going to create a real transportation crisis for the Ukrainians that live east of the Dnieper. And so, in this context, yeah, the Europeans are the Brits and Germans in particular are trying to pump more drones in, and by doing so, they're making themselves potential targets. And there's already these confrontations. I just gave one example last night. One of the Russian tankers was getting ready to exit the Baltic Sea, passing through a strait, and some NATO ship tried to stop it, and a Russian warship that was accompanying it ran up and basically threatened the NATO warship. We're gonna blow you out of the water. You back off, and the NATO ship backed off. So, we can have more confrontations like that, and the odds are, as this continues, we're gonna likely see an incident that will potentially escalate into Russia having to exchange fire, or will launch missile attacks on key military targets in the UK, in France, in Germany. Because Putin said, look, they're openly talking about going to war with us within a year or two, so they can't pretend that this is not a threat.
Larry, what is your understanding of Russia? You've been to Russia, since the war started. I think 2 or 3 times you've been to Russia since the war started. And you are familiar with what's going on in Russia. And there are people right now arguing that maybe the strategy of Vladimir Putin is wrong, his strategy is not working, and people are, are not happy with his decisions. I don't buy these sort of arguments. I don't know
Right.
about you. How do you feel about what's going on in Russia, considering the war?
Putin is not direct. He is not making the military decisions. The general staff is following a plan that they put together. Now, Putin in the past I think he has weighed in to insist that they try to definitely minimize civilian casualties, and not, and avoided attacking some targets. What happened on Wednesday was there's a series of target. Let's call it. It's like within Kiev's version of the Kremlin, sort of an area that is this government area that over the previous 4 years, Russia's not hit those areas. They did now. So that's where I think the gloves are off. They reportedly hit the underground bunkers that contain NATO officials. One of the attacks on the hotel, according to one source, claims that they killed NATO officers. And again, this goes back to the warnings that were issued by Lavrov 2 weeks ago, saying, "Hey, all of you Westerners, you get the hell out of Kyiv, because if you're still there, then it's you're taking your life into your own hands." So we've entered a new phase of the war. The Russians are making breakthroughs all along the line, and I think people will be surprised at where the war stands once we reach end of August.
Larry, there are many people who resigned from the Trump administration or somehow dismissed from the administration for various reasons. One of them, which in my opinion was important, is Dan Bongino. He was, the second person in FBI after
Right, the deputy director.
Patel, and he resigned, and he was a podcaster before getting there, before being in that position.
Yeah.
And looking at the way he has changed, I don't know if you watch his podcast before and after to compare what has happened. It's a huge change. And even, it was noticed by Tucker Carlson, and he said this about Dan Bongino. Here is what he said, Larry.
So quickly from a critic of the deep state to its most aggressive defender. What happened to Dan, do you think?
It looks like he had a breakdown of some sort.
He's terrified. That's obvious. I don't know why. I know, having had a lot of contact with Dan Bongino, he turned on a dime. Something happened to him at FBI that just broke him as a man, destroyed his life, and certainly destroyed his career. Dan is working to cover up the activities of the permanent government. I've never seen anyone change that much or be that afraid. I mean, like he was going to have a heart attack. He was so afraid. I'm not saying that to attack him, but I just wish I knew what happened.
Yeah. Do you think these people are so... I watched him before being part of the Trump administration. He was a so sensitive guy. He was reacting, criticizing, and then he was part of the administration, part of the the establishment. He tried, you remember the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He came out and said, "No, that's not real. We got the guy who killed him, who assassinated him." It's huge when it comes to this guy, Dan Bongino. And what is happening to these people when they go into the system and they see this huge sort of propaganda machine and the corruption behind the scene? They're somehow collapsed from within.
Yeah, well, I don't know. All we know is that we are seeing them do a complete 180-degree reversal. One of the most that program that you highlighted with from Tucker, where he's interviewing this investigative reporter that has identified, he believes he's identified the woman, a Capitol Hill police woman, that he says is the one who planted those fake bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters, that these bombs are part of a broader plot to try to indict Donald Trump and his followers. When that investigative reporter who had been in contact with Dan Bongino, in fact, when this reporter was pursuing that, trying to identify who the real bomber was, Dan Bongino praised this guy. I guess his name's Steve. Praised him for what he was doing. And then once Steve comes up with the actual evidence pointing to that this was an inside job with the Capitol Hill police involved with the CIA and the FBI, all of a sudden Bongino wouldn't say one word to him, wouldn't have any communication with him, and would attack him. So what he pointed out is Bongino he's a captive of the deep state and continues to embarrass himself. Yeah, there was a time I would tune in occasionally to watch him. I wouldn't give him the time of day. He's completely not worth watching.
Yeah. But he has changed. You can.
Oh yeah, Yeah, no, he's compromised in some way, and like Tucker said, what's happened. I mean, he has turned 180 degrees from what he was saying before he went into government. And I was naive enough to think that, hey, it was someone like Bongino. I thought actually you would need somebody like that from the outside to come in and shake it up, and instead, man, he became a captive of the system real quick. You know, for example, he'd been one of the leading advocates calling for the release of the Epstein files, and then he gets in and he becomes the leading person involved with editing and preventing the Epstein files from getting out.
Yeah.